Welcome to another exciting edition of FireBytes. Today we're actually going to cover M270 and 12.2.12.2.1. So packed full of features. And again, just to recap, I'm Johan Blumhart, sales engineer for the WatchGuard Northwest team. A lot of you I've met in person before. But if you have any future comments or any comments that suggestions for future FireBytes, feel free to reach out. You have my email address there, and we'll certainly put that on the agenda and give you guys the tips and tricks that you're looking for out of these sessions. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and let's go ahead and kick things off right away with the M270. So the M270 is our latest edition, and it completes the full full family refresh from WatchGuard. So some details on there, and certainly if you want more hardware specs, you want to nerd out a bit with me, we can chat offline. And certainly as we go through some of these other details today as well, sometimes we're going to just glance over a few items which I don't feel applies to general good, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So again, with the M270, we have 4 gigabytes of RAM. We have 8 1 gig ports, and it's really perfect for a small to mid-sized organizations with up to 60 users. With full UTM services, so that's unified threat management, that's including all those security services turned on, we are still delivering a whopping 1.6 gigabits per second. And you can see there the full Miercom report link. Just to get a little bit more into the specs, we have some of the throughput that is on point, or it's listed with the 370. So we're just looking at that middle column of 270. Again, these IMIX numbers are a new item that we've added to our data sheets, and that really just stands for internet mix of real numbers. So as we look at, for instance, IMIX numbers, we're looking at 1.8 there. VPN IMIX of 480 megabits per second. With HTTPS content inspection turned on, you can see those speeds all the way down. So again, concurrent connections, 2 million. So you shouldn't have any, if you spec that out for a max of about 60 users, you shouldn't have any issues with that. So while the Miercom has a number of different components, I did want to bring up this chart here to kind of pit us against some of our competitors. Now, with the 270, ironically, a lot of our competitors don't actually have a product that fits in line with the 270. So we actually pitted it against products that typically would go against the 370, and it still came out shining. And as we look at those speeds, so just to walk you through this, so firewall only, again, if you've heard me talk, perhaps WatchGuard isn't the fastest in the realm of our competitors. However, very few of us, hopefully none of us, actually buy our firewalls simply for having packet filtering. Hopefully we are using some of those security services. So as we turn on security services, we're moving to the right here. So we have firewall and intrusion prevention signatures. We can see here the gap is closing in. With firewall and AV, you can see this disparity of speeds right here from WatchGuard compared to our competitors. And then full UTM speeds as well, WatchGuard takes the lead. Now, I did want to point out, and I actually had to trim that slide out due to the sake of time, there's actually a graph there for HTTPS throughput comparisons as well from the Miercom report. And many of you might already know this, but for instance, Meraki doesn't even have any ability to do content inspection. So if you were to look at doing HTTPS inspection, Meraki can't even do that. So I would highly encourage you, I've said that a number of times and I will continue to say that, look at doing content inspection inside your networks, because the bad guys are using 443 for delivering malware. They're using it for command and control traffic. So definitely look at having that as part of your security approach. So just some general notes. XTM appliances do not support Fireware 12.2 and higher. Now there's going to be a branch if there's any issues that need to be addressed. on the older Fireware code, we will keep that address. But when we talk about some of the new features, Intelligent AV, Access Portal, some of those features aren't going to be released on the XTM appliances. Now, if you've been following along with the FireBytes, or you've checked out our FireBytes videos on YouTube, and again, that's just at youtube.com/WatchGuard NW for Northwest. We have a lot of those tutorial videos. One of them is how to migrate your configuration and upgrade your Firebox. And then I wanted to point out as well, 12.2.3 is in beta. You can join in into that beta program if you wanted to. A lot of cool features that we'll cover today as well towards the end of today's session. So just to recap, to look at the security subscription overview. So if you haven't checked out this chart in a while, we have a few new line items. Part of this is from 12.2 and then 12.2.1 as well. So a lot of us might be using intrusion prevention today, application control, again, not just to either allow or deny application categories on the network, but also to rate limit them. We have WebBlocker, reputation-enabled defense, gateway antivirus, all these exciting new or exciting security services. And then we're adding on 2 additional ones. So one is the access portal, which that is going to give you the ability to deliver, for instance, an RDP session securely. I talked to a number of people that unfortunately still see the need to publish RDP servers out to the world without any security. That's a very bad practice. WatchGuard through the access portal gives you the ability to do that securely. And then we have IntelligentAV, which is an exciting new second phase of our antivirus that I'll dig into a little bit more. But all of that is covered under our total security suite. Now, if you're interested in our latest offering, multi-factor authentication, that is not included in total security suite. And you can actually run that regardless of what firewalls you're running, and run that in a variety of different methods, whether it's securing your desktop, whether it's securing the access portal. All of those things can be secured with multi-factor authentication. So just to recap, I know a number of you have been waiting for this. If you haven't heard the news, we do have our RedForRed going on right now. So there's never been a better time to upgrade. I've heard a lot of people, I love this tagline. It's like getting the Firebox for free. And basically, you're just paying for those security subscriptions. So if you're in the scenario that you have an XTM appliance, reach out. You can email myself, email your sales team, and just for giggles, get a price quote on what it would take for getting RedForRed versus renewing. And you'll see that you're getting that new hardware practically for free. So definitely a good tip to keep in your back pocket. So kicking off with a 12.2, excuse me, Fireware version 12.2. Quite a few new exciting features. We're jamming this in. Same appliance. So we are looking at IntelligentAV. We're doing some file exceptions. Now, the way I have this laid out today is that we're just going to go through this list, and then the topics that are for the general good that I feel would apply to the most of us, well, you can go into a little bit more in depth on there. But just keep it on your radar that what's new, and then if you want to get more in depth, reach out, look at knowledge base, and go from there. So we have IntelligentAV, file exceptions, geolocation by policy, TLS profile minimum protocol version, TLS profiles for SMTP, and POP3 proxies. We have the ability now to restore a configuration file from the Web UI. We've always had that through WSM. Now we have it through the Web UI. We have some Firebox Cloud Enhancements, WebBlocker usability enhancements, on-premise WebBlocker server, FQDN or fully qualified domain name enhancements. Continuing on to control Firebox generated traffic. We have loop back interface IP address support. For global dynamic NAT and per policy dynamic NAT, AES GCM support. And we have secondary IP addresses for branch office VPN gateways, a very important one, which we'll dive into. Mobile VPN and SSL access portal settings, redundant single sign-on. A lot of you have been asking for redundant single sign-on servers. And then we also have some certificate management enhancements. Continuing on, what's more, we have gateway wireless controller enhancements, authentication, setting enhancements, and other enhancements. So quite a few new features packed into 12.2. The most exciting one for me is this IntelligentAV. So many of you realized that we have now changed out our AV engine to Bitdefender as our AV engine. We've actually added on a second phase with that, and that's our IntelligentAV, and we're delivering that through a partnership with Cylance. So IntelligentAV is a new subscription service that enhances the ability of gateway antivirus to detect new threats and polymorphic malware. So your traditional AV is signature-based, whereas this is artificial intelligence and mathematical models to examine and characterize millions of file attributes to determine if a file is a threat. So again, we're just taking that security in depth and we're adding on another layer for that. So with the IntelligentAV enabled, Gateway Antivirus uses two scan engines, Bitdefender and Gateway Antivirus Scan Engine. Using that Cylance, as I mentioned, working together to increase the ability of the Firebox to detect and block malware before it can enter your network. Now, in case you're wondering about speeds, those speeds that I displayed, UTM speeds for the M270, that includes all of those services turned on, including Gateway or IntelligentAV. So as we look at, and this, my selection box was a little bit off. It should be up here by IntelligentAV. My apologies for that. But it's IntelligentAV is supported on these Firebox models. The M series minus the M200 and M300. So if you're on the M270 and M370, that one is definitely supported. We also can support it on the Firebox Cloud and then the virtual firewalls as well. So IntelligentAV is included in total security subscriptions for the Firebox that support it. To enable this feature, all you need to do is grab that new feature key and turn on, you can enable feature key synchronization, which would then get your IntelligentAV. When the IntelligentAV is licensed, you can enable it in the Gateway Antivirus Global settings. So go ahead and just double check or click on Enable IntelligentAV in the antivirus settings. Make sure, and I can't stress this enough, make sure that you check your automatic update settings for your security subscriptions. What good is it if you're paying for those security subscriptions, but you're not getting those automatic updates for those? So IntelligentAV just adds another line item under automatic updates. You can go ahead and just check those IntelligentAV updates right there. And then you can go ahead and check on the IntelligentAV statistics. So from here, we can look at any viruses that were found with IntelligentAV beyond antivirus. And then keep in mind, so when it comes to security in depth, we have the Gateway Antivirus, we now have IntelligentAV, and we have APT Blocker. All of these are providing layers to your firewall security, coupled with TDR, Threat Detect and Response, which is our client-based application, which then can detect against more advanced malware, block those, and surgically remove it from your computers. In the Fireware Web UI, you see the subscription services statistics as well under there. Now, another feature, so widely common, a lot of people love it, was our geolocation. So everyone went out, raced out, and they blocked these countries. Then they came back to me and they said, Johan, this is phenomenal. We can block all these countries, but I have this development team that maybe needs to get to Russia or maybe needs to get to Asia. How can we enable geolocation with these exceptions? So good news is now you can enable geolocation at the policy level, which provides you with more granular control over the types of connections the Firebox denies based on geographic location. So just to dive in a little bit more on there, if we want to enable geolocation, that one is available with 11.12 and higher. And just to recap, it prevents connections to those countries that you specify. Now, if you haven't configured geolocation by policy, don't just race out and click every country to block other than the US, because a lot of those services, when it comes to, for instance, Amsterdam and the RIPE network, are critical to some of those web services being delivered. So make sure that you use this with caution. When you enable geolocation subscription service, it's automatically enabled in all policies. Now, if you needed to have some sort of policy, maybe you have a dev team in Asia, you can actually disable that geolocation in that specific policy. And here we have two examples, one through the Web UI and one through WSM. On just unchecking this box, and that removes it from that policy. So now we are moving into the next item. That's restore configuration from the Fireware Web UI. So in previous versions of Fireware, you could save the configuration to a file from the Web UI, but you couldn't restore it. You had to go into WSM to restore that. Now you can configure, or you can restore that saved configuration from the Fireware Web UI. And you can do that simply by going under System, and then Configuration. I did want to point out, while I have this screen up as well, if you do, or if you have to deal with auditors, make sure that you are familiar with this Firebox configuration report. This is available again under Firebox System and Configuration. This configuration report is going to give you a PDF, a nice document that you can send over to your auditors to show what policies you have in place. So a lot of people love that feature. But right under it is where you can restore that configuration file. So very exciting that we have the ability now. People love the Web UI since we've made changes. We've taken out the Java dependencies. People use the Web UI as their sole method of management. They can now restore that configuration file. So another important item on the agenda is having that secondary IP address for branch office VPN gateways. So if you have a situation where you need to have redundant links, if your primary link goes down, what happens to those branch office VPNs? Previously, they would have had challenges dialing in if your primary link was down. But now we can configure a second IP address as the local gateway IP address for that. So just to give you a heads up, we have the interface IP address, and this is a Web UI example for that. Now we also have some Firebox Cloud Enhancements. So some of you might realize that you might actually be running Firebox in the cloud today, either through Azure or AWS. So as we look at that, we can actually terminate dynamic tunnels. We can protect resources in the cloud. But there's a few new enhancements that we've included in this version that would include single sign-on, SSO, spam blocker, and quarantine server for the Firebox Cloud. We also have a Firebox Cloud options for Azure that will support an hourly license option. So when we talk about licensing, we have two methods that we can do Firebox Cloud. We can deal with bring your own license or pay-as-you-go service. So WatchGuard System Manager, so if we are tying in, we're leveraging the centralized management, we now can support management of Firebox Cloud, including Policy Manager and Firebox System Manager. We also can support management of Firebox Cloud for management of multiple Firebox OS updates. So again, if you're doing centralized management and you have 30 Fireboxes out there and you want to go ahead and update them all to 12.2.1, you just right click on that container and you can schedule that for Friday night at 10 o'clock and it will go through systematically and upgrade all your firewalls. So gone are the days where you have to actually remote to every firewall, do that upgrade manually. You have that ability right through centralized management. If that's something that you're interested in, feel free to reach out to your local sales team and we can get you more information on that. Part of that also includes drag and drop VPNs and templates, policy templates. So if we have, some of my customers have 80 locations of stores, and where network administrators often get into trouble is they create exceptions for one store, and all of a sudden we have this allow any rule, or this a session that's publicly open for this one exception, and that's how these breaches happen. So by having policy templates and having those pushed out, we can make sure that every firewall in our control has the same policies on there. And then if we change, for instance, our VoIP server, we can just change those IP addresses, and they'll roll out, push out those new policies to all of those locations. So just to recap on Azure hourly license. So previously, Firebox Cloud was available in the Microsoft Azure Marketplace only with your bring your own license, BYOL. So now we can do both BYOL and hourly license options. If you want to give it a try, feel free to give it a test drive under the hourly license model. You have a free 30-day trial for that. The trial does convert to a paid hourly subscription upon expiration of that trial. Firebox Cloud with both license options will be available in Azure Marketplace shortly after GA, general availability of Fireware 12.2. Now, we have some cases where we might have a 3-letter government agency that doesn't allow any communication with the cloud, but they still want to have a web blocker, so blocking not only adult content, but also blocking command and control traffic from happening. And we can do that through our on-premise web blocker server. So Fireware now supports an on-premise web blocker server with the same set of content categories as the WebSense Cloud. It's now called a Web Blocker Cloud. So supports more content categories than the Web Blocker server previously available for local installation. So if you're interested in that, again, reach out to your local SC or your sales team, and we can give you more information. FQDN. So previously, when I first started working at WatchGuard 5 years ago, over 5 years ago now, we had the ability to do a DNS lookup. So if we were to do star.microsoft.com, it would do a one-time lookup on those IP addresses. Now, we all know that with redundancy, Microsoft has multiple IP addresses, right? That it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that that would be expired as soon as you entered it, because those IP addresses are ever revolving. So fully qualified domain name allows you to do star.microsoft.com to be able to create policies, to be able to use that in your to field or in your from field. And now we've taken that and extended it to provide a greater granularity and flexibility. So you can use a wildcard FQDN with multi-level subdomains. You can use more than one FQDN, fully qualified domain name, to resolve to the same IP address. And then we also have FQDN support for static NAT, SNAT. So Fireware 12.2.1, moving right along. What's new and the latest and greatest from 12.2.1? We have a lot of DNS enhancements for mobile VPN. So previously we had the option to create DNS entries for SSL VPN users, mobile VPN users. But what about IPSec users? So now we're taking that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. One of the more exciting features of 12.2.1 is this first step that we're taking towards SD-WAN capabilities, so software-defined network capabilities. And that's through our WAN Interface Monitors. So exciting news, we'll definitely go more in depth on that. Loopback IP address support, certificate management enhancements, DF or don't fragment bit settings for branch office VPN gateways. We also have some new capabilities on restricting your password length control for Firebox database accounts. We also have gateway wireless controller enhancements, backup and restore enhancements, safe search enforcement level for YouTube. We also have a deny action added for gateway antivirus and VOD or virus outbreak detection in SMTP proxy. We also have WebBlocker usability updates, and we also have WatchGuard IPSec mobile VPN client updates and file exception statistics. So kicking things off, again, my apologies for having so much information in a short amount of time, but I wanted it to be more of a smorgasbord or appetizer where you see those items and then you can dive in to those a little bit later. So we have a DNS enhancements for mobile VPN. You can now configure more granular DNS options or settings for different types of mobile VPN. So as I mentioned, it was available previously for SSL, but now we are extending that to IPSec, IV2, and L2 TP mobile VPN configurations. So with that, we can offer DNS servers. We can also specify WIN servers and domain name. In all mobile VPN configurations, you can now select to assign or not assign the global DNS settings to mobile clients. So perhaps you need different DNS servers when they're remoting in. You can do that assigned through the mobile VPN configuration. So as I mentioned, one of the exciting things that we have coming down the pipe with SD-WAN is now we are taking the first step into looking at the WAN interface monitors. So if you have a scenario where you have multiple external ISP connections and you want the firewall to control, or you would like the firewall to control where your VoIP traffic goes out over the lower latency links, we are now taking the first step to be able to do that. So what that means is that we have the ability to look at the loss, latency, and jitter for WAN interfaces. So right now it's just a monitor. And then this is the foundation that we'll need to be able to control that in the future. But it's the first of several new SD-WAN related features planned for upcoming Fireware releases. So for example, in a future release, you'd be able to use this new monitoring to configure actions for policy failover. So right now, just to recap, we do have the option, we have 4 different options for a multi-WAN. We have failover, we have round robin, we have policy-based routing, and then we have interface overflow. So if we looked at we wanted to load balance, we could do that. That's through our equal cost multi-path protocol to balance a 100 meg link and a 50 meg link and have it round robin. But now we are extending that, or we will be extending that to look at things such as loss, latency, or jitter. So just to recap what some of those terms mean. So for instance, if I look at loss, percentage of packets lost. So I wouldn't want any sensitive traffic like VoIP or other sensitive traffic to go over a link that has loss or latency or jitter, right? So to see that data for a WAN interface, you must configure it as a multi-WAN interface and enable link monitor. And that data is based on responses from the link monitor targets. So if you've previously set up multi-WAN, you know that you can go in there and set up your targets on that. And again, I wouldn't suggest having it as your gateway. I wouldn't suggest having it as your ISP gateway, but maybe take it a step further so that you truly know that that link is up. The Fireware Web UI shows that historical data, and then Firebox System Manager shows that real-time data as well. So here we go, the Web UI. You can see the SD-WAN. We are breaking it down on loss, latency, and jitter. Looking at, we can break that down to last 20 minutes all the way to last 7 days from there. Now we have a capability or new features for Certificate Import Wizard. That's going to help you import those certificates in the correct functional category, whether it's that you want to have it for the access portal, you want it for the authentication portal. We now have a wizard for that that walks you through and can actually give you, for instance, user-friendly messages as in a key mismatch, just to help provide ease of use for your certificates. Now, we also, as I mentioned, have password length control. So it allows you to specify the minimum password length for those Firebox database accounts. If you're using, for instance, Active Directory, you could already do that through Active Directory. But this way, in some of the SMBs, they maybe don't have a full implementation of Active Directory tied to their Firebox. So now we can minimize or set a minimum password length for that. So obviously, the longer your password is, the more secure and harder it is to crack. It's considered to be one of the most effective security measures than using, actually more effective than using special characters in cases if you make longer passwords and make that into phrases, right? We also have some exciting new features for backup and restore enhancements. So Fireware 12.2.1 includes new backup enhancements. We can create backup, restore, and manage backup image files through some of this new page. Backup images are now stored on the Firebox directly. We no longer include the Fireware OS, which minimizes the disk space that it uses. And it's actually created every time the Firebox is upgraded. So if you are looking at deploying out upgrades centrally through your WatchGuard System Manager, you can do that. And it's the backup images are created automatically. Those backup images are retained on the Firebox until you delete them or reset the Firebox to factory default. And as I mentioned, they're smaller, and they, as such, their operations are quite a bit quicker. Now, we also have some new enhancements for safe search enforcement level. So if you're have heard me talk before, you know that I spent about 15 years in public education. Safe search was a very critical part of our network configurations, so that if someone went to Google Images or went to YouTube, they couldn't search for explicit image, we would enable safe search enforcement. Now we're actually taking that beyond for YouTube, and we can actually make that into a strict enforcement as well. So if you want, you can just go in, enable safe search, and take that one step further to strict enforcement level for YouTube. On that note, another component for our students was being able to block and monitor WebBlocker. So we can now actually do multiple category rows, just increasing that ease of use that you know from WatchGuard. So we just checkbox which categories we want, and then we can enable alarm, enable logging. So that was also another feature, was that through WebBlocker, we would alarm, and it was on a global alarm basis. So if someone was searching for something inappropriate, it would alarm regardless if it was adult material or weapons. Now we can actually say we want to alarm only in these categories for maybe self-hate or weapons. And then we have alarms specifically for those categories, and that was driven to support schools better. We also have a WatchGuard IPSec a mobile VPN client upgrades. So if you're not familiar with our IPSec mobile VPN client, that is a premium NCP client that allows us quite a bit of flexibility. We can actually spin up a VPN session before that user logs in on Windows, so that we can deploy out group policy object scripts, so that we can do all sorts of things before that user authentication process happens. So we do have a new 64-bit version. We've updated the design to reflect a Windows 10 design. And then again, the ability to connect to a hotspot to start the VPN connection before you log on to Windows. So this is widely popular with emergency services, police, medics, in their vehicles, that automatically spins up that connection. And then some new features in 12.3. So as I mentioned, that beta is currently going on. You can actually enroll in that, provide feedback. But some of the features that you can expect to see out of that. And again, I wouldn't suggest doing that on your production firewalls. But we have some SD-WAN capability. So before we just talked about monitoring, but now we can actually take policy actions and reporting enhancements in there. Coming out, we also have NetFlow support. So a lot of you have been asking, can WatchGuard implement NetFlow support? Great news, with 12.3, it's going to be included under there. We're also taking those geolocation policy actions one step further, where we could create exceptions. We're actually going to take that step further through there. And again, I don't want to give too much away. I want to have some information for future FireBytes, but just know that these are some of the functionality items coming up. We also can auto-save backup files to USB thumb drives or sticks. We have some Fire Cluster diagnostics. And again, just to touch base on Fire Cluster, that's our high availability option. Many of you might be running in scenarios where you can't afford to upgrade your firewall, have that reboot because your production time might be 24 hours. Fire Cluster is actually a way that we can increase that uptime, and it's only about 50%. We actually have some promotions as well for Fire Cluster. So reach out to your local sales team if that's something that you're interested in, establishing a high availability environment. But with that, we also have in 12.3 some new Active Directory setup wizards and much, much more coming out. So again, WatchGuard is keeping on top of its game, always evolving, always bettering itself, exciting new features. So with that, let's recap with the family of Firebox appliances. We have the T15. Actually, I need to upgrade this slide here. We have the T15, 35, and 55, T70, M270, 370, 440, all the way up to your 5600. We have the Firebox V. We also have the Firebox Cloud options as well. So with that, I feel like I've been talking like an auctioneer here, going through all these slides. My apologies. I do like to have typically more of a demonstration environment. And certainly, if you want to see any one of these items demonstrated in a future FireBytes, reach out to me, send me an email. I'd be glad to do a hands-on demo of these. But with that, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. Next FireBytes are going to be is going to be on October 19th. And again, there you have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WatchGuardNW. We will post this recording so that you can go back. I know it was a lot of information to take in. You can go back, rewind, pause as you need and to digest all this information. So with that, thank you so much for attending today's FireBytes session, and we will see you next time.